Hello, I'm Kristin Judge, the founder and CEO of the Cybercrime Support Network. Thank you for joining us today at Cyber Threat Thursdays. It is an honor to have Mitchel Chang here from Trend Micro. I have to tell you, Trend Micro is a sponsor and supporter of our work, and I've had the pleasure of working with Mitchel over the years, and I'm so excited to have him here to talk about IIoT and IoT. So Mitchel, could you just share with everybody a little bit about yourself and what you do for Trend Micro?
Yes, hi. My name is Mitchel Chang. I'm currently head of CSR, Corporate Social Responsibility and Education at Trend Micro. I've been with the company for almost 18 years. For the better part until 2018, I was running a technical support organization for Trend Micro.
Great. Thank you so much for being here and for being a part of just educating the communities on better, safe online practices. I know you do a lot in this field. So I want to start with today a question about Industry 4.0. We've been hearing about this a little bit now in some of the publications I've been reading. What does Industry 4.0 mean to you?
What the folks, they're trying to present another industrial revolution. This will be the fourth industrial revolution. As we know, the second industrial revolution was the auto assembly line concept, and the last industrial revolution was more automation, robotics, and things like that took place, and automation in factories. And this industrial revolution is more to deal with something they call cyber physical, where the computers and algorithms start taking over the devices we have out there. And these are what we call IoT or IIoT devices.
Yeah, thank you. And, if we're getting into this new 4.0 industry and it's all connected to the internet, obviously, it's going to impact security. So why is it important for us to be paying attention to what's happening in the Industry 4.0?
Yeah. Well, one thing about these changes taking place, it did not happen overnight, is many years in the making. When I think they start saying there's another industrial revolution coming, or we're in a part of this process right now, is because there's rapid change taking place, which we can quantify. And so, again, it take a lot of different things, but there's a lot of different emergence coming on where with technology are more mature, or there's a lot of automation or cyber physical activity going on in different segments of our industry, including smart home.
That's a great point. Yeah. And if you think about it, the smartphone didn't really come out until 10 years ago. And I've heard some people relate that to, when we look at the adoption rates, the adoption rate for electricity in the home was something like 40 years after the light bulb came out. But with smartphones, how quickly did 2/3 of the world have a smartphone and access to the internet? We've gone pretty quickly here in this new industrial revolution of connecting everything together. So I feel like it is faster than any other revolution we've seen. Would you agree?
Right. I think from my perspective, the driving factor of such a technology growth is when you have different technology coming together. When you add, the saying 1 + 1 + 1 is not equal to 3, is actually some sort of exponential factor on the benefit you're getting from these smart devices. You mentioned smartphone. That's a very good example, because if you think about just the camera itself in the smartphone, for longest time we take a picture and we will get something, a physical print or a negative or something along those lines. Even the digital camera came out, we still try to make a print. And but when the smartphone came out, like the iPhones and Android phones, both, that they connected with the store, and they connected with the social media tools. So these are technology maturity enables these devices where that's what I mean when you plus when you have a social media, Apple Store, or the payment and how you use the photo, because last time I checked, there's over 3 billion smartphone devices out in the market, and it's phenomenal since iPhone was just introduced 10 years ago.
Yeah, think about that uptake of just becoming a part of what we do. And what I try and explain to audiences is, when the automobile came out, we had some time before everyone was driving, and now we have driver's ed for our and they get a permit for our teenagers. We don't just hand them a car and say good luck at 15, but at 7, 8, maybe 10 years old, we just hand them a smartphone with no security training. So I think it's a really important, the work that both of our organizations do to make sure people have some kind of security behind the wheel as it comes to the internet. I want to talk a little bit about IIoT versus IoT devices. Could you explain the difference, and what is IIoT?
Okay, IIoT, from my perspective, it stands for Industrial IoT, Internet of Things. These are the factory automation. That's actually a big part of our daily life, where the efficiency of our factories. And so prior to IIoT, currently we have something called ICS, Industrial Control Systems. So those are the robotic automation. And so this is a part of an overall IoT, or cyber physical system change taking place in the industries, in industrial manufacturers, and they need to start making their product, our process, more efficient. So they start adopting the cyber physical concept, where the devices or manufacturing machines, they can connect through internet, and leveraging some of the data, the information, our computing process that we have to make decisions. For example, the factory automation in IoT, they can enable the factory to tie into technology like big data, machine learning algorithms, to make a real-time decision in the factory to help increase manufacturing yield. And so the machines can be controlled by a computing system and make decisions real time based on machine learning algorithms. And the benefit is huge. You can imagine, the factory doesn't adopt these new technology, they're going to be no longer in competitiveness with other their competitors.
Right. I mean, just like the Industrial Revolution, this one's coming. You just got to get on board, or you're going to be left behind. I want to ask you a little bit. So how does factory automation that you're just talking about, how does the security setting for factory automation vary from the more complex IT environment? I know I've heard many times said that industrial control systems are now sometimes being taken off of the internet. They're going back to the old-fashioned way because of the threats. So what do you see as far as factory automation security?
Well, a lot of manufacturing organizations have a department called OT, operational technology versus information technology. They're sort of IT on the other side, on the factory. And traditionally, the OT network are not connected to the IT network, and they're not connected to internet per se. And also a lot of these machines, they use embedded controllers and things like that. It's not like our IT environment. Everybody use some standard operating system like Unix or Mac OS or Windows, but rather it's like a Wild West. Every factory have their flavor system, and they didn't really have to worry about security in the past. So there's a lot of potential vulnerability, and so we do see an emergence of IT and OT as we speak, and so because they're opening up the OT side to take advantage of a cloud computing, machine learning, big data type of technology, they have to open up. Benefit is there, but that what you mentioned, that's the reason they're kind of got slowed down, because their environment is much more vulnerable. And also, once you open up the network, the challenge is there could be lateral movement. The the virus or threats can come in from the IT side and propagate an OT side because the environment is open by nature.
That's right. So having those systems somewhat segregated and the people who have access to them, especially admin access, is going to be really important to consider. When I take that back to the consumer home environment, I'll sometimes have people say to me, should I connect my toaster and my refrigerator and my garage door all to the internet? And I'll say, well, if you are the type of person who uses good security tools on your computer and your phone, and you always update your patches, then sure, go ahead. But most people don't use, all of those great resources that are available. They sometimes use default passwords. And so for those folks, I recommend maybe not having so much attached to the internet. So do you see increasing cyber attacks for IoT and IIoT devices?
Yeah, it is vendor. We interact with the community on as far as making products for defending the internet. That we do see an increase, but relative number of the threats coming from IoT or IIoT side still relatively small versus the threats from the cyber or internet computing side. But we certainly see a very big growth, and there's opportunity because I think the stakes are very high at this point, because if we migrate into more cyber physical system type of world or IoT type of world, the stakes are very high. Instead of ransom your home computer on ransomware, the ransom is going to be a city or infrastructure, or imagine you're fully, our lives going to be dependent on more automation and more sort of cyber physical type of activities. Yeah. And give you an example, like my younger daughter, they start learning to drive, and they have the younger generation, because this impact our culture too. Younger generation have less knowledge of how to read a map because they just use Google Map and navigate, right? And if you show them a map, you say go north and go south. They have a less. So imagine somebody come in and hack the system, and they can no longer drive. You can no longer navigate, but the benefit of IoT is going to be huge. Another example I can give you is, imagine we've gone through the COVID crisis. Right now, we're fortunate. We have internet. We have a video webinar, video conferencing, these capabilities. Imagine we didn't have all these features right now. How we will live our lives, right? And but if the world going through the change in IoT side. Imagine we could build in our mass. We can build in sensors that make a contact tracing and everything so much easier. Like these N95 masks, you can put a sensor there, and you can immediately detect if somebody have the virus or not. I mean, things like that. There's so many possibilities that we can make our life better or easier. And also, sensors for medical devices. But just imagine people can hack into these systems. Right. They're going to create a big disruptive scenario for the community or our country.
I think that's partially why smart cities, which we've been talking about for 10 years, I've been on panels and different things talking about smart cities. I think they're a little slow on the uptake potentially because the risk versus reward is, okay, if we do connect absolutely everything in our city to the internet, we're now saying to people all around the world, they can now take down our whole city. So, I think it's a great idea. Even the driverless cars, great ideas. But as soon as you give the power of moving things around to the internet, in a sense, you also have to look at the risk versus reward. And so hopefully the security conversation continues to come in as people are developing these smart cities. We certainly try and lend our voice to that. So if someone is a home IoT user, We have all these smart devices, our garage door opener, our doorbell, you name it. There's a lot of stuff in even our TVs. Most of those are smart. And people may not even know it's an IoT device. So what advice would you give people when it comes to, being more secure with the IoT they have in their homes?
Well, I think currently, one thing I do like to sort of step back a second. If you look at this IoT scenario, from my perspective, is in the making for the last 5 or 10 years. Depends on who you talk to. There's a lot of convergence coming together, and everybody sort of labeled this as a group referred to as IoT. And but if you look at their different segments, right? There's industrial manufacturing, there's autonomous vehicle driving, right? And these are separate industry that start thinking about this. And first of all, I think that there's no looking back now. Everything is in motion already. And home devices, they start building a home device that has internet accessibility for many years. To me, this is kind of like I can think when the computers, laptop first came out with USB port. We must have had our laptop for the first 3 years. We made a very little use of USB port when it first came out. This is analogous to the IoT devices right now. People are not really taking the full advantage of the interface yet, but slowly adopting to it. And so good thing for the consumer, because right now there's not, we only anticipate certain kind of threats that we know of come in. So to start the consumer to tackle this is to really just practice the regular cybersecurity hygiene we normally educate our consumer base, like multi-factor authentication, strong password, and frequently back up your system. And those practices certainly apply. And as IoT devices come out, I think the first wave IoT security device, from my perspective, are these like networking boxes. So they try to detect, scan your network at your home level, make sure there's no malicious threats try to come in, blocking certain connectivity that's unwanted that we know of it. But I believe, at least my prediction is that people will find a new attacking vector as we progress that we haven't even thought about it. But to stay on top of your, to keep your system protected, just stay top on your normal hygiene, and also make sure people update their operating system as the patches come out. That's actually quite important as well.
Right. And so if someone is not very tech savvy, they might not even know that there's patches on their baby monitor, and they may not know that it comes with a default password, that every baby monitor made by that manufacturer has the same password when it comes to you, and you're supposed to actually change the password when you get it. These are the things that the typical person who doesn't work in cyber like you and I do, we think about those things, but the typical person doesn't, because they don't live in the world that we do. So we really have to make sure that we're communicating with consumers. And then there's also programs. I was talking to one of our other sponsors, Comcast, came on and talked about their X-Fi system, and how because we have that now as our modem in our home for our Xfinity system, it scans our IoT devices and helps to keep us safer. So I think the companies are coming out now that are setting up your networks with this in mind. Certainly the IoT
Right.
devices have been on their mind, but if you own your own IoT device, you're absolutely right. Cyber hygiene, change the password, add multi-factor authentication, and update it when there is a patch, right? Those are some simple things.
Yeah, I think good thing is most of vendor, they do care, they do build in. Trend Micro, we also with a number is router vendors on Wi-Fi side to embed some sort of security in the Wi-Fi router itself. And also, for example, automotive manufacturers, I think we've been in discussion with these guys because their design cycle is fairly long for new cars. And we've been talking about like cybersecurity on IoT for many years already. It's not something they just add on overnight. They have think through the architecture and adding the standards and things like that on there. And
Yeah.
but also a challenge from a vendor standpoint is there's not a whole lot of standardization yet, and I'm sure those things will get more developed as we progress.
Yeah, I'm sure NIST is going to help us with some of those, security standards on IoT. There may already be some out there I haven't seen yet. Are there advanced routers then for IoT devices? You talked about that a little bit. Would you dive into that for us a little more?
Well, again, from my perspective, the when they say advanced router, they focus more on the technology side than signal side, but on the security side, there's not some manufacturers implement more stuff, and some people implement just like a firewall devices. You have different policy, different things, and there's also a trade-off. I use some product at home, for example. So some are maybe too aggressive. They provide false positive, and so as a techie person, I'm very conscious on the performance of my network, and so there's also a trade-off. These are learnings as we go through, and I think I do want to mention one thing for the consumers out there. To me, it's kind of like your automotive, your cars. Some people like to fix cars. They understand what they need to do for the cars. But the minimum I think the person need to know about cars is you need to know when the scheduled maintenance come up, when you do need to change brakes. If you don't know, you gotta find a good mechanic to help you with that. And I think the analogy goes to the sort of cyber world home computer. Some people can easily set up their router and add security, change the default password in the router. But some people, that's just not something they're interested to do. But then you got to rely on somebody to help you. I think at least from my perspective, we see the biggest challenge is with the consumer level to small business, because they usually don't have the resource like a large enterprise and corporation to protect themselves.
Well, and that's a great analogy. I mean, they probably, as a small business, have an accountant that does their books, because they may not be an accountant. They may be someone who knows a lot about their business. And so for security, it's okay to reach out to people to get help. And there's a lot of free help. And a lot of organizations out there have put out checklists people can look at and free training. So there is material out there that people can take advantage of. But you're right. If you don't understand and it's not intuitive to you how to secure your systems, reach out to somebody, because you do have to have that scheduled maintenance of backing up. And if you can just have someone help you on your computer to make sure that your backups are automatic and you don't have to remember to go back and put those on. So I've been talking a little bit about how I would love to see manufacturers build IoT build two-factor authentication into their devices before they send them out to the public. And, Nest had an issue about a year ago where a perpetrator had been talking to a young woman in her bedroom because he was able to get onto the system. And a week later, they made two-factor authentication required on a Nest to be able to operate it. So I'm wondering, when are we going to get to that point? And do you think we need to get to the point where IoT has two-factor authentication as a minimum standard when it leaves the manufacturer?
I think from my perspective, this sort of the devices itself, they play with the system. Is for example, there's some product like a small manufacturer. There's a small firewall or intrusion devices on the manufacturing floor, and so that plays not necessarily the device itself have a two-factor authentication, but they have to support a broader ecosystem that supports the two-factor authentication. Right. Because I think from the security posture standpoint, we always worry about the weakest link. You can have a very strong front door, but leave all the holes in the back windows, and the bad guys can still get in. So long as they're there, because for example, the factory could be protected by very advanced next generation firewall and intrusion prevention devices. But what about the floor? There may be subnets and things like that need to be protected. So it is, if you look at it from a factory standpoint, not necessarily two-factor authentication per device, but they need to have very strong protection overall. And when we say multi-factor, it could be something something you have. These things all apply.
Right, absolutely. And I really appreciate too, on fraudsupport.org, we have some of the free resources that Trend Micro puts out. And I think the tech companies like Trend Micro have really done a lot to understand they need to help secure people and have some free tools also. So I encourage people to go to fraudsupport.org and click on security tools. You'll see some great free tools that you can take advantage of from Trend Micro. And I just want to thank you, Mitchel, for spending time with me today on Cyber Threat Thursday and for being on the advisory board for Cybercrime Support Network. We're so thankful for your partnership, and we hope to just keep growing our reach and helping more and more small businesses and consumers fight the cyber threats. Thank you so much for spending time with me today.
Thank you, and we're here to help because our company at least really believe in you can have the best tool and product in the world, but you got to have that level of awareness, know when the scheduled maintenance need to be done to make sure you're protected, fully protected from the world, safe from exchanging informations.
That's absolutely right. Thank you so much, and you take care, and we'll do this again soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.